it's an incredible blessing to realize that we have the hopes that we have. And today I want to talk about I've entitled this sermon, Oneness of Will. And let me just say what precipitated my thinking along this line. Hopefully it was God. But I was thinking about our fragmented world. We live in a world that is so fragmented. People are at one another's throats. People cannot get along with one another. We see all the chaos that's going on in the world. And with all that fragmentation and the like, it creates all kinds of chaos for us. It creates all kinds of anxiety, concerns. And yet when we begin to look at, well, what is causing this fragmentation that we have? I'm reminded of what Jesus said in the prophecy, in the end time, father against mother and brother and sister and all of this inability to get along with one another. And yet we read, and I read in the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul writing to the church there in Ephesians about the oneness of God and about the oneness of His will and purpose. And so I want to start there in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 4 through 6. Where the Apostle Paul says to the church there at Ephesus, there is one body, one Spirit, just as you're called in one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. So we see 7 things here that the Apostle Paul is addressing as one. Body, Spirit, hope, Lord, faith, and baptism, and God. He uses that as one. Yet in our world today, we find there are many who object to these ones. We find all kinds of objections to this. We hear such terms as, well, there's many roads to God. There's many roads to heaven. There's many ways of doing things. While on the one hand we recognize that God has diversity in His creation and His things that He's doing and the gifts that God gives to us and all of that, this attitude of you can do it any way that you want to do it and everything is fine, I believe can create and does create for us a lot of problems and difficulties. We find people and institutions who vary and they disagree on how things ought to be done. And we also find that everybody tends to believe that they are equally right in what they believe and how they see and how they understand this. So the question that I think that the Apostle Paul is looking at and even dealing with the church there at Ephesus is, how do we have oneness in a fractured world? Because today's world lacks we-ness. I was listening to news last evening and they were just talking, 2 commentators on different political sides of the spectrum, so to speak. But they actually were able and did say that it appears that our society lacks we-ness. When you think about our Constitution, it says, we the people. But with that was a commonality that they had. They had a kind of one goal in mind, or a few goals, but it wasn't scattered all over the place. And though people disagreed with one another, here's the essence. There was something that drew them together and kept them collectively together, like we as family. You have family, and family is fractured. Now, in the dysfunctional family, you find that they're fractured all over the place. Everybody is doing their own thing. It's just chaos. And or there's a dictatorial kind of thing, a oneness that is brought about by authority or is very, very unhealthy and not giving the independence that they need to be able to operate within the family in a safe environment. You can find that. So division appears to be everywhere, affecting everything and everyone. And we cannot find agreement on certain things or most everything. And then we live in a world today where everybody is the entitlement to your opinion. And not only are you entitled to your opinion, the web has caused it that you can cast your net of opinion all over the world. You can express it as fact without being challenged and all of those things. So we find the feeling of rightness in our opinion. Because how many of you feel that your opinion is wrong? Well, no, you don't feel your opinion is wrong because it's your opinion. That's the conclusion that you have come to it. But how did you come to that conclusion? Are you the own sole originator of that conclusion or that opinion that you have? When I thought about this, I could not help but reflect upon the problem that ancient Israel had back in the book of Judges, and it concludes in the book of Judges. It's mentioned several times in. But the way that it concludes in the book of Judges is this, and it basically is talking about people doing things their way. And it said in the book of Judges, chapter 21 and verse 25, "In those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit." And the King James puts it, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And that's mentioned several times there. There was a lack of leadership. There was a lack of central good and direction. Because, again, it is around the king that you kind of organize your society, your community, and all of that. And there's some direction. Now, I'm not saying that's the best way of doing it, but at least it gives you some kind of, well, this is what we're going to do. This is for the community good, or the country good. In the book of Proverbs also, it tells us another thing that kind of helps us in understanding in Proverbs chapter 3. And when we think about our rightness and how people tend to think about rightness, it tells us here, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Now, I have a way, a little terminology that I use when we lean into our own understanding. And it's a little bit risque, as it were. I call it mental incest. That is, you're inbreeding your own ideas. When we are the sole source of our information and we're just thinking, it's kind of like a person who is paranoid. Their own mind is just, they're seeing it, they think that's true, or, a person who's schizophrenic, that's what they see in their mind, and they won't listen to anybody else. They won't listen to reason. So what we find in the book of Proverbs is, it says, don't lean to your own understanding. But it says, first of all, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and shun evil. I think it's very, very important for us to understand. Now, I'm going to kind of jump to the conclusion of this matter so that we can kind of see this, because there are a lot of scriptures that I have in this today. If you look at your note, there's a whole lot of scriptures that you can look at. They're there just to help us to realize that there is something to connect what we're thinking to that isn't just about me, but rather is about what Scripture has to say. But here is my thought. In terms of what Proverbs says here, in terms of what the problem that Israel had back in the book of Judges, in terms of what the Apostle Paul is saying here. The problem that we have today and why we are fragmented is because we are living less and less without God. And we are living less and less without the God of Israel. The God that the Bible speaks of. The God who is our Father that Jesus speaks of. We're living less and less. Our thoughts, or the thoughts of the world, are not, as it were, vetted by what does God say? How does God say this? What does He want us to do? Rather, they are the human ideas apart from God, because we don't want God involved in it. And our country has gone more godless. Now, when I say godless, I'm again talking about, and this creates problems, and I think as Billy Graham was doing his evangelical presentation that he did recently, he was talking about there is one God, there is one way.
Feeling the blues today? or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life or need spiritual advice? The Worldwide Church of God is located in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto, California. We welcome everyone to attend our worship services with us every week at the times listed on your screen.